Good morning. Just gonna go ahead and pause the recording real quick before
All right, the automated.
everybody in. Yep. There we go. Fantastic. All right, welcome. Today is June 18th, and it is a special session today. We're going to be diving into vocal health for speakers. Look, people, your voice is your instrument. It is your trade. It's also your brand, part of your personal brand. And at the end of the day, if we lose our voice or if our voice fails us in some way in terms of either just going out entirely or too much vocal strain, there are so many things that can go wrong, and oftentimes speakers just don't think about it until it does. However, like most things, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And as we said in the emails, we don't want to wake up in that situation where we booked the big gig, we've taken the big deposit, and in the Get Speaking Gigs world, we take 100% deposits. So we've got all the money and we wake up with no voice. What are we going to do? I see Jeff in the room too. Jeff's a musician, a singer. That voice is the dulcet tones of Jeff Coral. But yeah, so that's what we're going to talk about today. And we've invited voice expert, vocal health coach Brienne Hennessy, and she's somebody who's been a friend of the Get Speaking Gigs world for a long time and recently started working with our clients as well, and just is a wealth of knowledge regarding vocal health. And Brienne, one of the things you have taught me is that your voice is almost like a muscle, and we need to train it almost like an athlete would. And one of the misconceptions and the biggest myths that I believed before I met Brienne was that you just need to rest your voice after a long day of speaking or a full day. If you're just going to rest, just sit on the couch and rest. Is that what an athlete does when they're training for a marathon? Just sit on the couch? No, 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 no. We got to exercise and train and condition our voice. So that is just one of the tips that I got from Brienne. And Brienne, I'd love to welcome you to the Zoom room. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Tim. This is so fun to talk about this in this community. Hi, all. To those who I know, to those who I don't yet know, thank you for being here. I'm so excited.
So let's start, Brienne, with just a little bit of background on you. And everybody kind of wants to know, okay, we love the tips, but we want to make sure they're credible. There's a lot of noise floating around out there. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about just your background, 30 seconds, a minute, however long it takes. Really, I know you've got a bit of a pedigree. So I'd like to hear a little bit about that.
Absolutely. My first 14 years of my career, I spent as a speech and voice pathologist. So, what that means is I rehabilitated and assessed injured voices through some of the top voice clinics in the country. Emory, Vanderbilt, most recently at UW-Madison here in Wisconsin. And 9 times out of 10, people would come into those clinic rooms already having been chronically struggling with a voice issue, an injury, a concern, a worry, and asking, why me? Why now? Why didn't I know about this sooner? So that was the first 14 years of really diving deep into the specialty of voice, airway, cough, throat clearing. And then about 2018, I got the nudge, the urge, that little voice that says, what if you went out on your own? What if you took all of this preventative knowledge and started to kind of spread that further? And so by 2019, I had started my business, Your Vocal Vitality. By September 2020, I left my golden handcuff job, as I call it, in the clinic. Some of you might be thinking, September 2020, that was bold. Yes, it was. My family thought I was crazy for leaving that particular year. But when you know you have to make the leap, it's time to leap. Yeah, so that was a really big eye-opening time for me. And the last 5 years, I've been fortunate to work with a lot of different executives, coaches, speakers, entrepreneurs who literally use their voice to have a livelihood. And it's been such a joy.
Very cool. Yeah, and
Yeah.
we're super pleased and excited and just lucky, quite honestly, to have you being able to share a lot of this stuff. So we're gonna start. I'd like to just really start with right at the speaker's worst nightmare, right? You wake up, you have no
Yeah.
voice. First of all, is there hope? What can be done? Is it true? I've heard stories that these famous singers go to their vocal coach and they have a gig and they can't even whisper, and the vocal coach whips up some magic and then suddenly they can sing like Beyonce can sing. Curious, curious to hear, how much of that is fact, how much of that is fiction,
Yeah.
how real is this of a concern? First of all, let me do this. In the chat, I know not everybody's on video. I'd normally just say hold up your hands, but in the chat, have you ever lost your voice
Mhm.
prior to a gig, right? Has that ever happened? Has it ever been sort of a fear, maybe even in the back of your mind? Has that
Mhm.
ever happened to you? And that way we know we're starting with something that is relevant for people in the room. I know for me, this is always in the back of my mind. What happens if we lose
Yeah.
voice? So let's have you dive in a little bit to that, Brienne, while people are popping in the chat.
When it comes to voice loss, while we have different predictors, of course, there's going to be things like the seasonal cold. Those of you with allergies, I see you. Those of you who experience kind of frequent bouts of something and it affects your voice. And then those of you may have voice loss or discomfort or unreliability when you're under stress and times of stress. So lots of different factors. And while we can be a little bit predictive, some people are more at risk than others. It really comes down to listening to your voice like a barometer. So, one of my beliefs is that our voice is a barometer. And if you're learning it and knowing it and paying attention to it well before, you can start to sense what it might need so you can mitigate having that voice loss issue. Now, to Tim's point, because I've had speakers in my DMs 2 days before a gig going, what am I going to do? My voice is gone. Sometimes that happens. So, in those instances, we do our best to go through a specific protocol that I've created that allows it to get you through what you need to without doing more harm. The biggest mistake I see speakers and vocal athletes, and again, to define for those of you who weren't yet in the room, a vocal athlete, in my view, is anyone who relies on their voice to do their work. Okay, it's your livelihood. So if you have to speak extensively, you are a vocal athlete. And when that starts to happen, you don't want to push through, but a lot of people do because we wake up and take our voice for granted. That's a very human thing to do until it's not working for us. So it is true that you can mitigate and recover quickly from some of those milder to moderate moments. If it's truly severe, and that's where I'm very fortunate, my ear has heard a lot of different kinds of voices. I can hear certain nuances of what's going on. If it's truly severe, then there are some things we need to look at to make sure that is this worth it in the short term? Is it worth pushing through to potentially do more damage versus adjusting, delegating, maybe rescheduling so that you have a voice enough going forward? And one of the things I think that is with that you also mentioned, Tim, is a big myth is people figure A, they'll just rest it, or B, they shouldn't whisper. Two things. The thing about whisper, most people whisper with a very big, strained sound. Like if I'm going to do this. That's not the way to whisper. Whisper is a very mild, gentle, temporary tool you can use. The rest piece does have its place. And you'll see, and I'll drop some links later, you'll see in protocols, rest matters, but in certain doses and not the whole time. Because again, that athlete who sprains their ankle is not just going to elevate it on the couch and sit there and wait for it to improve. You have to start gaining some mobility. You have to start exercising it in very prescribed ways. And so I think that's where people do themselves a disservice. They go, oh man, I lost my voice. It's fine. I'll wait till Monday morning. It'll be back. And then it's not 100%. And you have meetings and sales calls and engagements and networking events and happy hours and reading to the kids at night. How are you going to do all that? So it's a lot of that preventative education, and you can treat it, yes, similar to a muscle, but think of it as just part of your body that you want to learn to listen to and prioritize.
So much to unpack there. I love the fact that you mentioned, hey, you know what? Don't forget, you could make it worse, right? You think it's
Yeah.
bad now, you could absolutely make it worse, maybe even long-term damage, which
Yes.
we want to avoid. I've heard of vocal nodes and various things, but I don't know anything about those, but it scares me, right? 'Cause this is so important. So that's number one. And then the other thing you mentioned is the rest of our lives, not just speaking, but reading to the kids. If we celebrated Father's Day here in the States and I don't know, maybe internationally as well. And my kids gave me cards, and one of the things they both said, both my daughters said, was they enjoyed when I would read to them every night and do all the voices. And man, oh man, that's a strain.
Yeah.
And I am blown away to hear that even whispering can be an extra strain on our voice. And speakers know we want to use dynamic range when we speak, and we want to sometimes get louder and sometimes get softer. And
Mhm.
that's so interesting to me to hear that even a whisper can be further strain than.
Yeah, exactly. Everything comes down to the production, doing it efficiently, effectively, and for short doses versus incorrectly. And sometimes that tips the scales.
Mm.
And so that's something that definitely, when I listen to people, when I do voice health screenings, those are those kind of nuances that as you learn what your voice is telling you and start to treat it as the asset and instrument it deserves to be treated as, it is very resilient. It's just not invincible.
I want to hear a little bit more. You mentioned about this vocal assessment or inventory or something like that. I'm
Yeah.
here what people think of when they think of vocal health is either they have a voice or they don't have a voice. There
Yes.
are so many things that I have seen you work through with clients, from vocal tics to frequent throat clearing, things that you wouldn't think
Yeah.
stereotypically would fall under the purview of vocal health. Is there a maybe a quick list or a rundown of some of those areas that can be improved that some people think, well, it's just how I am. I just have a nasally voice, or I just like, what are
Mm,
some of those components that you have worked with speakers or singers or vocalists or vocal athletes that may
yeah.
be relevant to some of the people in the room and some of the people watching the replay?
A few things come to mind that, again, traverse that kind of myth arena, but also what can be improved. It always comes down first to, I think, that mindset. If you have a willingness to be aware that your voice is telling you things and that you can take care of it, that's the first step. Because to your point, some people are like, bah, it's fine. This is just the way it's going to be. Okay, that's probably not the growth mindset that we're going for in this. But at the same time, the other mindset I see a lot is they want a quick fix. I don't think we're here to be fixed. I don't think that anything has to be done like that. We have to be willing to put in the time and the effort, and it goes for your voice as well. So, to that end, yes, there are things and behaviors such as throat clearing. Excessive throat clearing can be, and you don't have to, nobody has to raise their hand, but if you just think through your life, if you might know someone, whether, it is a cubicle mate, if you work in an office, all the way to a friend or family member who might just be that person that is pretty frequently throat clearing. That suggests that there is something disrupted going on with vocal function. And so, yes, we get in the work I do with clients, we get into the more depths of what's underlying that, and is that stress related, psychological related, emotional related, physical related, all the holistic pieces. But then at the same time, I still hear things like, well, I just warm up my voice by talking. That's enough, right? Well, it doesn't really help if you talk like this. Now, this is what we would call the Britney Spears or Kardashian voice. This is glottal fry or vocal fry. How many of you would like to listen to me like this the rest of this interview? Probably not so fun. But people do this type of quality thinking, well, that's just the way it's always been. So we work through that as well, because these really are these very minimal ranges and spaces that I see, even speakers and coaches, people who need to be vibrant with their presence, who need to project their voice in certain ways, limit themselves very much to what their voice is capable of. So those are a couple things that really come to mind. The final one that I see a lot is, well, I do breath practices to calm myself before I speak. Cool. You can breathe all day. Y'all are breathing right now, except you breath holders. I see you. So take a breath. And if you're breathing, that is all well and good. But if you go to start speaking and your voice starts to shake or cut in and out, you haven't coordinated those two elements. And so something is amiss. You might feel very relaxed from that breath practice, but your voice is not yet to that same level of bringing you that relaxation, that power, that presence that you deserve. So those are a couple of things that come to mind.
It's so funny that I had you like, hey, go into your background and your history, your
Mm.
experience. Y'all just need to listen to Brienne's voice for 2 seconds, right? To understand she's mastered the instrument. She knows a little bit of something about the topic and the importance of it. So I also want to talk to the idea of being accessible to our audiences,
Mm.
our
Mhm.
messages accessible to our audiences. And there are a variety of listeners in our audience, and some of our listeners are maybe they have less capacity to listen and to hear maybe for longer periods of time. It may not be an attention thing. It may be just they don't hear as well, for
Mhm.
example. Maybe there are certain frequencies that they struggle
Mhm.
with. There's also this little thing called misophonia, and if you
Yeah.
know any misophonics in your life, this is a condition where certain sounds, and they've mapped this in the brain. It's like
Yeah.
the auditory is connected directly to the rage center of the brain. So
Yeah.
if a misophonic is in a restaurant and they're hearing somebody chew, they think it's okay to we can kill them, right? Like it's okay.
Yeah.
We can
They
chew
go
into
to 0 to 60.
we can end this person's life right now, right? I think it's okay. So,
Mhm.
that is a real thing, right? Again, it's just the idea of making sure that we are not, uh, you know, hating anybody's pet peeves. If, and it's
Mm.
impossible to know for sure across the board,
Right.
again, to be sort of perfect in that regard.
That's
But
right.
if there is a clear and present and obvious glitch in the voice, or practice that may not be super healthy, obviously, but also palatable to audiences. And when you shift it into fry
Yeah.
from your normal resonant, voice,
Mhm.
it was like almost exhausting immediately. So I just wanted to point out again the accessibility and making sure we are accessible to our audiences as well. So hearing a little bit about what could go wrong and hearing a little bit about all the different components and aspects that are vocal related and voice health
Mhm.
related, I also want to talk a little bit about what it's like for somebody who feels vocally healthy,
Mhm.
but they want to go from a to an A plus, right?
Yeah.
They want to make their voice
Mm.
just sound really rich and
Yeah.
resonant. And talk to me about, is this, yeah, I love how you said growth mindset. Um, can What's the capacity for people to maximize their voice? Like how
Mhm.
can they go from a zero to 100? Like what sort of hope is there again for people who just want to take their healthy voice and improve it?
Yeah, excellent question. One of my clients, Eleanor Beaton, she is a seven-figure business owner. And at the time we started working together for our 6-month container, she knew she was in that already peak performance mindset in so many areas of her business. That's how she got to where she was. But she knew she wanted to be more visible. She knew that meant not only she enjoyed showing up on video and doing her speaking engagements, but something about how she was being received when she was speaking needed to be addressed for her. And so, yes, you can go from that A to A plus level. And to me, I think it comes down to the importance of recognizing that our voices are going to vary through a day, a week. As we age, our voices change and evolve. That's very normal. And so, how can we meet ourselves where we are and continue to tweak and do the exercises and do the practices that bring our voice into the level it's meant to in that moment? It's not like we reach some pinnacle and we stay there. That's not realistic for any part of our well being or our body or our journey. We have to be evolving with it. But you can definitely look at it from the standpoint of yes, I'm going to implement this into my routine the same way I go to the gym and do my workouts. You can look at it from the point of how does my voice make me feel? Not even so much how does it make others feel? So, the biggest thing that I found, one of the biggest things, for example, with Eleanor was she actually didn't like hearing herself on playback. And I don't know how many of you can relate to that in the chat. If you can, be like, if you cannot stand the sound of your voice, I ask you, how can you hate the very thing that you're using to stand up on that stage and share your message? So that internal work has to start aligning because otherwise it's just going to continue to be this dissonance where health wise you might be like, wow, that person sounds really strong and present and resonant, and yet something's off. And it's on the speaker to look into that and to explore that. And I personally believe that our voice, being that asset, can create well-being in new ways when we allow it to. So it's not just this output externally, it's that we're listening internally. And for me, that's intuition. And so that's another way to get from A to A plus level is if you can honor and listen and learn what does your intuition tell you and match that to the sound that you're naturally supposed to make, not anybody else's sound. Don't go out there mimicking other people's sound. That takes it way off base, right? You want to find your natural sound. It just gets it so palpable and so juicy to me. And
So
people go, that's me. You can't predict this, Tim. They literally, there'll be this magical moment and they'll go, oh, that feels like me. And it's just really beautiful to witness.
So we see this oftentimes when we design messages for
Mm,
take a speaker's
yes,
message, we take a
yes,
block of marble, as we say, we carve out the statue and we show it back to them. And they
yes,
say, these are my words. This is it. And suddenly the confidence changes to be able to
yes,
shout it from the rooftops.
yes,
Taking that same concept and applying it to the vocal delivery, the
yeah.
medium that we are delivering that message, and making
Hmm.
sure there is alignment with the same level of confidence. This is me, this is my message, this is my mission, this is my purpose,
Yeah.
this is the change that I want to see in the world
Mhm.
and that I want to help to bring about. And being able to hear yourself say those words
Yeah.
in the voice that belongs to you and feels the confidence in there. Suddenly marketing becomes easier. Suddenly self-promotion isn't really self-promotion. It's not self-aggrandizing, it's message aggrandizing, right? It's mission aggrandizing.
Yeah. It's rippling out to be resonant with those you're meant for, those who are meant to hear you.
And what happens when a speaker feels more confident, right? And I
They're
don't just mean
they're
on
going to captivate.
yeah, I don't
Absolutely.
just mean on stage. People are going to smell it on you. They're going to feel it. They're going to be
Mhm.
swept up in it. So it's not, I mean, this is the aha moment for me, and another aha moment for me in the idea that the alignment of voice
Yeah.
and voice, right? So that
Yeah.
we feel like, oh, this is me. This is not just the right message,
Yeah.
it's the right medium. And
Yeah.
being able to edit yourself on video without cringing constantly, or if you're recording
Yeah.
audiobooks and not cringing constantly and feeling that alignment, you're going to be want to shout it from the rooftops instead of hide
Mhm.
it in a closet somewhere. So that
Exactly.
is so huge. A couple of things I am seeing in the chat, Brienne. Um, Elizabeth says, "You are so right, Brienne. I fell in love with my voice when I worked with a video consultant. She filmed me during several gigs, and I was able to better understand my voice." As Tom asked earlier, "Hey, how do I properly whisper?" We talked about what the not
Yeah.
to do's. Is there
Yeah.
a quick tactic or technique to properly whisper? In fact,
Yeah.
especially a stage whisper, perhaps?
Yes. We call it a confidential voice, actually, as if you're talking to someone sharing something in confidence. And so you want to make sure you have proper breath support, that you aren't pressing from the throat. And those of you who press from the throat, you'll know because it will fatigue very quickly. It'll feel uncomfortable versus the whisper being very fluid and smooth like this. You're really relying on all the air. And if you do have to add more oomph to that, again, there has to be a recognition of how long you can sustain that. And so stamina work is a lot of what I do with my clients because you can do these things for short bits, but if you need more stamina and you want to whisper or project it a little more, but it needs to be with air. You guys can maybe hear the difference. This is with air, but this is from my throat. Can you guys hear the difference? It's subtle. If you can't hear it, that's okay. You'll be able to feel it. And we do these contrasts in practice because you have to know what it feels like, not just what it sounds like, for what not to do versus also what does feel good for you. So yes, that's the easiest way to do a gentle whisper. Yeah.
Cool. Tom also asked if people in our program, the highly paid speaker, our accelerator program, get any personal coaching on improving the voice. And so while it's not part of the program, we do have sessions like this where we kind of introduce some of the topics and ideas. Brienne does and has worked with some of our clients sort of outside the program, but that's a conversation you can have together. But yeah, I think, and Dino, if there's anything else in the chat that I'm missing, love a heads up on that as well. I would appreciate that. But yeah, my goodness, so much to cover, so much to talk about. I'm curious about the the concept of anybody who's listened to a voice coach before has heard the idea of warm ups. Um,
Mhm.
I'm curious a little bit about this whole idea. And here's my brain is going. Oh boy, vocal athlete? Oh, it's just like going to the gym? Oh my goodness. I know that there are some bodybuilders who take it to an 11, and I know that there are some people who just get a light workout in, right? Is the voice, I mean, are there options here? Do we have to go all out? Are we talking about 2 hours a day of working out our voice?
Yeah.
What's practical? What's realistic? And I'd love to hear a little bit about sort of some of the varying degrees with which you have worked with clients in the past.
Yeah, that's a great question too. So, whenever someone comes into the space, it's always important for us to go through a couple things. Their vocal load. So, we literally go through an inventory of what are the activities that are requiring their voice. because we have to start building a strategic plan for when they need to kind of go full on versus when they need to back off or delegate. And then we start going through, there's a litany of different exercises, not just vocal, though. I believe the mind and body come into this to start to tease out which one feels best, which one works best, and which one will be most convenient on the whole for their schedule, for their routine. As we know, building a new habit is not 21 days. Can we just be straight about that? You do not build habits in 21 days. On average, it's about 66 days and sometimes longer. So if you're willing to come into it saying, yes, I can spend 10 minutes a day doing this, I can spend 3 5-minute periods a day doing this, that is an excellent start. You're already miles ahead of being able to implement something that's as easy as warming up in the shower or doing it before and after you have a meeting. Like, there's really easy ways to integrate this in. And when I'm working with folks, it really comes down to what is their load for that season? What kind of load are we preparing for? So some folks are getting into, 5-10 day launches. Some folks are getting into, back-to-back events. So we have to kind of have a runway for that. And then they learn how to adjust that strategically for themselves. So it is not it is not a go in the gym and aim to be a bodybuilder level. It is really, how can it be integrated into your wellness routine in a way that feels good? I want you to have fun with your voice and play with it. I want it to be something that you enjoy doing. If you don't enjoy doing this, it's not going to work for you. It's just not. I also want you to feel like your voice is teaching you things as you're instructing it on how to work more optimally.
All right, I got a big one here.
Okay.
I got a big one.
Let's hear it.
Vocal warm-ups, right? We know the up, bop, la, 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 like all the crazy, I'm going to say crazy because it feels.
Oh, yeah. Weird. I make people do weird things. I own it. It's great.
Before I get on stage, there's people all over the place, right? Sometimes I go into the bathroom and I'm in the stall and, somebody else is in the room and they're hearing me going, wee Like, what and when and how do you help clients overcome the awkward factor of vocal warm-ups? I don't know. You don't always have the luxury of running out into the parking lot and be sitting in your car and doing it. But talk us through some of these thoughts and ideas, because that is, even though I know what to do, sometimes I'm like, I ain't doing that now. Talk me through that.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say there is this curious, funny little device, and it was marketed towards singers, but anyone could use it if they choose. It's actually called the Singer's Box, and it's a handheld, like, acoustic box that you can put over your face. Yes,
like
so that they can all be in backstage and be doing their warm-ups into a box, and it greatly dampens the output. So that does exist. So with that,
I have like a cat face or something on the other side.
Yes, you go. Oh, I am sure, 100% sure they have branded them and created little memes on the out. Yes, I'm sure there's decorations galore. It's one of those things where, yes, you learn, kind of, especially if you're going to an event and you're not sure of the venue or if you'll have a corner to steal away to. You learn to step into greater discomfort, absolutely. And also, by the end of doing those warm-ups, who is it benefiting? Is it truly benefiting them? Oh, well, yeah, because they're the listener and they're going to hear you better. They're going to appreciate that you have this very appealing voice, as it were. I just had somebody the other day tell me that they had to turn off a podcast because they could not stand the sound of the person's voice. Now, back to a little bit of what you said earlier, some of this could be, just how people are perceiving it. We all have implicit bias. We're just naturally not going to like hearing certain things, whether it's what someone's saying or how they're saying it. And we can talk about that. But ultimately, the awkwardness is based on when you decide what's more important to you. Is it more important that you feel grounded and prepared? Do you care what anybody thinks when you're posting on social media? If you still do, I feel that we all have to get over that. Like, what are people going to think about me? And at the same time, you're right. People don't see people out in the wild all the time doing voice exercises. So it's unusual to folks. But how can you step into, yeah, this is actually the way I keep my voice healthy. This is what I do because I'm a paid speaker, by the way. That's impressive. Like, people are going to perk up to that. I did have a client. She is the creator of the live launch method, Kelly Roach. So she's traveling all the time And she ended up, gosh, we had her sessions everywhere. We had them in a hotel lobby. When she couldn't make it to her room in time, she locked herself out of her house by accident when she ran to run an errand, and it was our session time. So she did it on her front lawn. Like she didn't care, right? And then yes, there are other people who steal away to the bathroom, and do a little bit there. But remember what I said before about the runway. You're an athlete who's already been training and conditioning. So for your warm-ups to be these extensive things before a gig means that you haven't been doing the work up front to then have just little moments of recalibrating, tweaking on site. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting the point about who do you want to be embarrassed in front of? You have a choice of who you're going to be embarrassed in front of. A
Yeah.
few people in the bathroom or in the lobby or whatever, or hundreds or thousands of people on stage when your voice is not where it needs to be. So maybe not embarrassed, but not as effective or efficient.
Effective, uncertain. Nobody likes that feeling of worry that the voice won't be reliable. Oh, it cracked a little bit. Something's going to happen. You just want to set all of that to rest with that.
Cool. Jeff, if you're ready, I see your comment in the chat about having a question, and it's easier to come on camera and ask versus typing it in the chat. So would like to invite you to do that.
Yeah, can you hear me? You got me.
Sure.
Hi, Brienne.
Hi, Jeff.
So here's a question. I'll try to make this as quickly as possible. So when I was younger, when I was in my 20s, back in the ancient times, I sang in bands. I had a very powerful, very clear, very resonant voice. When I was 28 years old, I got a really bad bronchitis, was sick for a while, like a good solid week or something. And recovering from that bronchitis, my voice never came back to where it had been. And this went on. At that time, I really enjoyed singing. I went to an ear, throat, and, whatever those people are, all kinds of things to try to solve this problem. And the voice never came back. In fact, that was one of the reasons I took such a long hiatus from ever performing or doing anything until this current iteration, which you're aware of. So in this current iteration, when I started, I was still having a lot of vocal problems. So I started Googling everything about my symptoms. And I saw that there is, in fact, a phenomenon where if you get sick and lose your voice, a percentage of people never have their voice come back. In my case, it actually has come back, and I'm going to say is 3/4 of what it used to be, which is good enough for me for right now. But have you ever heard of that phenomenon? And is there any answer to it?
Yes, sir, I have. We worked with a lot of different folks who had what's called a viral injury to the nerve that allows your vocal folds to move and function properly. It is rare. It does happen to varying degrees of severity. People will get a viral cold like that, like with bronchitis or a severe episode of cough. And the vagus nerve, just to kind of back up, I'll get geeky about anatomy here just for a second. The vagus nerve is the primary nerve, the longest nerve, cranial nerve 10, that travels down all the way into the gut, but also powers the vocal folds. And what that means is the branches off of that can be susceptible to different types of injury, both mechanical, physical, and neurologic. So what that looks like is when vocal folds are moving. I really wanted to show y'all vocal folds today, but I didn't ask Tim to pull up that image. When vocal folds are moving, they're opening and closing. But if one side gets weak and stops moving and opening and closing in that same way because the nerve has gotten weak, you're going to notice a change in how your voice sounds. You're going to notice a change in your range. And it takes up to 12 months for that nerve to start to heal and regenerate, pending certain types of exercises that you can do to hopefully increase the healing process. Sometimes there are medical procedures that can be done. But what I'm hearing you say, Jeff, is that while you went to an ear, nose, and throat doctor, I will get on the soapbox for a second. Not every ear, nose, and throat doctor or otolaryngologist is created equal. Just like every speech pathologist is not created equal. They specialize. And the ear, nose, and throat doctors who specialize in voice are called laryngologists. And as a speech pathologist who specialized in voice, those are the comprehensive teams that if y'all ever have issues and don't know where to go, please reach out, because I will point you in the direction of the folks who will actually do comprehensive exams, actually give you things that you can use and give you the accurate diagnosis. And then, Jeff, if I may, the other thing we're kind of considering here in this differential is just the natural course of aging. So if you're already dealing with a less than optimal function because of a potential nerve issue, put aging vocal folds on top of that, and that can also feel like it's another hurdle to overcome. But all very workable in this voice as you are now, with exercises and with very specific ways of building up your stamina, not in the way that maybe someone who's never had a nerve injury would do. So that's something we can talk about at a different time. But I'm sorry you went through that. That's a scary thing to go through. And it definitely means that there are some, again, preventative education. I don't want y'all going to someone who tells you it's just reflux. It'll get better on its own.
That's what
And
they
not
told me. Reflex.
I bet they did.
Yep.
And not listen to what this means for you, your livelihood, who you are. So that's a big piece. I'm grateful you brought that up, and I just get really, that's why I don't, vocal coach is the most close niche that I am related to, but this is where vocal coaches can do harm as well. And I am not shy about that because I've worked with patients whose vocal coach did not do them justice. And part of that is not sending them to the specialists that need to do the proper assessments to make sure that you have a voice that you want. It may not sound like it did, but there's certainly, as you know, a voice in there to work with beautifully.
Well, one quick follow up to that, because it's a problem that continues to this day, is inflammation in my vocal cords. That's why they thought it was reflux. And I suffered through a bland diet for like a year to solve the reflux problem, and it never did anything.
Right.
But even to this day, like as I'm speaking here today, my voice is pretty clear.
Yeah.
But sometimes I still get that inflammation, and then I lose all the clarity. So any tips or any?
I'm going to be straight with you about that, Jeff, too. I think I would want to, I would need to do a voice. So the voice health screening that I mentioned earlier, that's something that I'm going to drop the link in the chat for anyone. I do those complimentary. I need to hear you do a few things to kind of tease out what tips would be specific to you. Inflammation is a very catch-all term at this point. Sometimes that has to do with the actual vocal folds, the tissues being puffy, inflamed. Other times it has to do with that coordination. Maybe there's not enough breath support. Maybe you're pushing from the wrong muscles. Maybe it's just literally you've tapped out for the day with your talking. So let's touch base, and I'd love to kind of listen a bit more in specifics. That sound good?
Okay, sure.
Okay,
Yep,
awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, thanks for the question. That's a good one. I'm hearing so much that I'm catching a look at the time that there is, and I love that we've given you this opportunity to really dive deep. And I'll use the phrase "nerd out" a little bit on
nerd out
because I can see how passionate you are about this. But I can also look back in my own speaking career, and I had a career previously that used my voice, and I learned basically through trial and error. And I did hire one vocal coach to help me sort of project and this and that. But I am, and I had a voiceover career as well, a little short voiceover career where I did commercials and that sort of thing. And thinking about some of the successes that I've had and tracing them back to the quality of a well, of a good voice, right?
Yeah.
On stage, cool. On video, cool. But what about things like the discovery call? What about what your voice says about you in terms of the confidence of, hey, I got you. I got this gig. I have this event. I've been here before. I got the t-shirt. We're going to rock this for you. And being able to exude confidence through your voice, not only with what you're saying, but also how you're saying it. And one of the vocal issues that comes up that I see so often is the sentences that end on the uptick.
Upspeak? I don't know what you're talking about, Tim.
Is this fixable? I mean, and I'm doing all these ums and ahs that they try to beat out of you from Toastmasters as well. I think there's a number of different factors that pull confidence out of your voice. So I'd like to just allow you the floor to talk about a few of those and see if there's any tips that we can offer. And then we'll get back to the questions. Dino's got some good ones from the chat.
When it comes to things like discovery calls, we have to go back to what is the kind of level of nervousness, not being present in your own body, groundedness, and practice that you've done for those calls. And I don't mean practice like have a script that you verbatim read and, sound like cardboard doing. What I mean is when I work with folks trying to quell some of that nervousness that ends up showing up as upspeak or mumbling and talking really fast and the voice fades off, or this particular interjection, ums and ahs can be natural. And to your point, Tim, sometimes they can, if they get excessive, we're like, let's rein it in. But a lot of folks lately have been doing right, right. And that's a tricky one too, because you're asking for a bid for connection, right? But you're also putting the pressure on that they need to agree with you. And what if they don't? But you're doing it not for that. You're doing it because you're nervous. I got to fill space. I can't have pauses. Can I? So practicing both what it feels like in your body I love role playing these things with clients to know what it feels like when they're feeling in that relaxed, calm space. The vagus nerve we talked about earlier, the vagus nerve is what you can regulate for going from fight, flight, freeze, fawn, or faint for some of y'all, all the way to the rest and relax and digest state of being. So the more we're practicing that state of being and connecting our voice to it, the better. If you're feeling calm while you're preparing for that discovery call and then you get on and your voice squeaks and you sound really nervous or you do upspeak, that to me is a nervous system regulation that we need to look at while also practicing what you're going to say. When it comes to upspeak in general, for those of you who maybe haven't heard it pervasively, it can really reduce credibility. It can make the person think you don't know what you're talking about. It does happen naturally, so don't be hard on yourself if it, I still do it. It's not like it flies in sometimes, that's fine. But we have to look at how are you feeling in that moment. If things are tensing up and feeling constricted and everything's going up in pitch, okay, we need to regulate the physical components first. So that's how I invite people to approach even more maybe nerve-wracking situations like sales calls. You have to believe in what you're saying. And that goes back to that knowing and listening from your intuition, believing your message. So when you speak it, why would you waver? You believe it. And therefore, the person, however it lands, will receive it as they're meant to. And to the point of the other conviction, love your voice, love yourself. If you are loving the sound that you're making and how you're saying it, and you've done your due diligence to prepare for that, you have to detach from the outcome. And I think that makes the biggest difference in people not allowing their bodies' fight, flight, freeze reactions to come online during those type of situations when they know they are detached from the outcome. They are safe and whole and worthy no matter what in those moments. And again, I believe this comes through and ripples out of the voice when that is the case.
Brienne, you saw me burst into spontaneous applause, and
Ah,
the reason I did is because I just love and wholeheartedly fully support that this conversation surrounding the voice starts at the toes, works all its way up through the brain and the mind and the nervous system and the physical. And it's
yeah,
very similar. We're often asked, like, hey, what do I charge for this particular event? What do I charge for this client?
yeah,
What do I charge as a speaker? It goes so much deeper than the words that come out of your mouth because your feet
yes,
is the highest number you can say with a straight face,
yeah,
right? And so it's getting to be able to say those numbers with a straight face and with a straight voice, right? With a voice that
yeah,
doesn't betray you. And I
yeah.
also want to speak to this moment of stepping on the stage or popping into the Zoom call for the discovery call. All the
Mhm.
practice is different because your physiology is now different if there's,
Correct,
say,
correct.
nerves, I call it presence and
Yeah,
an energy. But
yeah,
you get the idea. This is
exactly.
all great things to prepare for. Brienne, before we dive into the chat, and again, Dean, I'm going to invite you to kind of call out some of those great questions in the chat. Go ahead and if you want to share a little bit about what you want to pop in the chat in terms of this complimentary. I keep calling it a vocal assessment, but
Oh, yeah. Wonderful. Okay, thank you. So, a couple things. I'm gonna first pop in the kind of top starter tips for getting your voice into a healthy place. And this is one of those things that I think again people take for granted. I don't want you to look at the list and think, oh my gosh, I have to do all the things. No, pick like two and see what that would look like and integrate them into your day. And then the other thing with the call, that is essentially you and I together for up to 30 minutes, sometimes a little more, where I can hear your voice, listen, have you do some things. Yes, you're going to do some weird things. So it's your first chance to get super awkward. Welcome. And then really discuss your goals. Like, what will that look like for you now? What will that look like down the road? What do you have coming up? So it's a great way just to kind of get an audit, as it were, of your voice function. And I think that I like that as an awareness piece, again, because this is an asset that you want to get an ROI on. And at the same time, we're at this time point. Maybe something is different for you in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. Maybe a cold comes on and you need something to do more urgently, which also reminds me, and I'll put this if you guys want to know more about that. When those voice loss moments come up, because some of y'all are unicorns and never have lost your voice, that's amazing. We'd like to study you in the research labs. But when the voice issues do come up, save yourself some time. Try the protocol. The voice emergency kit is what I developed because it doesn't need to be this freak out moment. The stress isn't going to help. It's not going to help your voice. It's not going to help your healing. And you need to have more beingness and energy behind healing it than do, search, freak out. Okay. So that's something also that I hope is of use to y'all.
Super helpful for sure. I just pulled it up on my screen. I'll give a quick screen share of it to let people know what they're kind of getting ready to take a peek at. So I love this idea of a voice emergency kit. If you're in the moment, you're in that situation, and there it is. You can take a peek at this great resource. Very cool. It's my first time seeing this, Brienne. I will be back. I will be.
Awesome.
So, good to know, good to hear. In fact, I know that there are a lot of emergencies and possibilities that can show up. There are a lot of great questions in the chat, specifically, how do I deal with this? What's the best thing to drink, before a gig?
Oh, yeah, got lots of tips about that.
Yeah. Let's have you kind of go through and unpack some of those, and let's pick a couple to feature here.
Sure.
Yeah, go for it.
If you want to pick them, but there's some that came in a little bit earlier. I'm going to kind of group them for the sake of our time together.
Okay.
Do you recommend tongue twisters, exercise, and warm-ups? And Tom also asks, what's a good source for good vocal exercises?
Yeah, okay. Tongue twisters are speech exercises, not truly voice exercises. So while you may be in a moment where you feel like your voice is functioning well and you're doing, me, ma, me, moo, my, and all these different, red leather, yellow leather, tongue twisters, I again ask if your voice is struggling or it feels a little tired that day, or you're still kind of in morning voice and you're doing those speech exercises, it's not going to matter because you're essentially like that athlete with the slightly sprained ankle, hobbling on that sprained ankle. You're not going to go sprint. You got to work up from the ankle up. And so it's similar with voice. I really prefer that people warm up their voice, whether that is things like humming, and there's different levels and layers of that. One of my, couple of my favorites have to do with a straw. So those of you who have a straw, it can be metal or whatever. One of my favorites are straw exercises. I won't geek out on the physics of why this is cool, but that can be really supportive to the voice. And where you're doing things like glides, where you're doing up and down through your range, whether you're doing soft or loud, but it doesn't have to be these really extensive things. It needs to be honed to what feels best, what's sounding good, and what stretches you in these different ways. So some places, there's lots of different YouTube videos. I don't have any in particular right off the bat. They're easy to look up. I have thought of doing like a series of voice exercises that people can do. So maybe that's an idea after today. But I want you to look for ones that A, you try and feel good to you, and B, are not trying to force you to go too far too fast. And you'll know because you'll either feel discomfort here, you'll feel pain. Please stop if you feel pain. Or I get this a lot from people. Well, I did my warm-ups, but then my voice sounded worse after. We're doing something wrong there. So whether it's the instructor, whether it's the warm-up, whether it doesn't match you, just call me and we'll figure it out.
Awesome. Super helpful. Dean, we got a few more minutes. Let's try to grab a few more questions.
Okay. One is one of the things we come up with all the time is we're constantly wanting to clear our throats. In the physiology arena, what are some hacks or some tips, how to do it, not to do it? If to to do it, etc.?
First and foremost, if you're clearing your throat because there is actual crud and mucus sensation and all of that, that is biologically appropriate to do. You don't want that going down into your lungs. And at the same time, if you're doing it excessively, it means it becomes a habit. So just like having, let's say, that mosquito bite, you're like, oh, I'll just itch it once. Oh, I'm itching it again. Oh, it's itchy, or I'm itching it again. We need to stop that cycle of the habit of throat clearing. So some things that really help with that are A, becoming aware of how often you do it. So sometimes I have people even get out little like paper and tick mark how often they're doing it, because you will be, I promise you, you will be surprised that you're in the tens, 20s. I've had people hundreds of times a day doing it, not realizing it. Then we have to look at, are you well hydrated? We can talk about hydration in a whole other talk if we need to, what that looks like. And then making sure that you're doing things to preempt that throat clear. So let's say you feel that tickle, that urge. Just swallow. When you swallow, you can't throat clear at the same time. Swallowing is much gentler because you're not slamming your vocal folds together like you would in a throat clear. And so even these little adjustments to the behavior can help. But then that also is where the voice health audit or review on a call can be helpful, because then I can tailor it to what's specific to how often you're throat clearing and what feels relieving to you. A little bit of that is also in the free guide as well. Some good throat clear tips.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah. Tom asks, and I think these are sort of grouping as well.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on moisture for
Yeah.
vocal cords via
Yeah.
mobilization? And of course, the good, better, best intake, like
Yeah.
what supplements, what to eat, not to eat, what to do, what not to do.
Yeah, this is where there is still a lot of pervasive myths out there, but I also understand that everybody's sensory systems are going to prefer different things than others. So you see me, I like to normalize drinking during talking because people go hours without seeing them sip anything. So while we can hydrate, keep in mind, especially if you're traveling, planes are very drying, but if you're traveling or have something in a few days, please don't just guzzle the morning of. You actually need to be hydrating 24 to 48 hours prior, more above and beyond what you normally would, because that takes time to get through the system. Fun fact, we don't know how much of that water actually goes to the larynx, to the vocal folds, because the science isn't quite there yet, and the vocal folds self-lubricate. So to the point about nebulizers, I actually love nebulizers, Tom. My favorite is the vocal mist, and that link is in the handout as well. That's surface moisture. So let's say you are hydrated and you're doing, I like lemon in my water because lemon activates the salivary gland. So if you're that dry mouth, cotton mouth person, lemon tartness, that will really help you feel like it's not drying out. But sometimes you need a little bit more through the airways. So a nebulizer, the best kinds have a face mask that you're going to use, and takes all of 10 minutes. Mine's in my closet over there. But it is one of those really helpful, temporary, but very helpful ways to keep the lubrication up higher when maybe you have allergies. Maybe you're in a drier environment. Maybe your AC is kicking on, whatever the case may be. Maybe you snore at night and you need it first thing in the morning. So I'm a huge fan of nebulizers, absolutely, especially before a speaking gig. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're coming up against it on time. I can absolutely recognize and realize we're scratching the surface of the tip of the iceberg here. There are seemingly infinite variables here, right? So I want to once again direct everybody to the chat. I popped that link again if you want to have that complimentary call and voice audit with Brienne, just to see how do other people perceive your voice? What is improvable? What sort of plan would it require? And again, for all of the reasons we talked about, not just on stage or on video, but also on these all important discovery calls where, hey, things hang in the balance. There's 9 other speakers they're considering. Sometimes they just get a vibe and a feeling. I often ask people why they hired me. Sometimes they're just like, it just felt right. It just felt like, that you were the guy, So yes, Tom, I agree. Great stuff. This was excellent. Both Toms would love some more, says Tom Scott. So very, very helpful today. Before we wrap, before we end, we're going to give people one more chance to click that link in the chat and set up a time with you, Brienne, but also wanted to give you an opportunity, Brienne, to, I don't want to say go on a rant or anything like that, but I just want here, is there a pet peeve? Is there a myth out there that you constantly hear people talking about that you got to say to yourself, hold on, maybe you've said it already today, but let's tear down a myth or two, Brienne, in terms of what a lot of vocal coaches or so-called experts might say, hey, this is what you should do for your voice before a gig. Anything come to mind, Brienne, that you just want to say, stop it, no more?
Just talk higher. Just talk higher and your voice will be better. No, no, no. You got to sound authoritative. Just talk lower. Even if you're a woman, I think you should talk lower to sound authoritative. I literally feel like I want to throw up right now saying those things. Like I see that so pervasively. There are some famous vocal coaches that names you would probably know who I have been in the rooms with, and they are telling people this. And I watch, in this particular example, men going into these higher registers and talking a little breathier because they want to, try to do something different with their voice. It is so uncomfortable. It is not them. And then women who are told that the only way they'll be taken seriously is to go lower in their pitch and to really resonate this way, which means setting themselves up for more injury because they are way out of their natural range. And also, you can take us seriously with our natural voice. Thank you very much. Those are two big things that I could go on with for a while. But it doesn't do the person a good service because you are looking at it again, very surface, very external. What's pleasing for me? What do I want to hear? No, we need to start from within and draw out that natural sound. So I don't care who hears it, that is resonating and rippling in the way it's meant to.
We have interviewed some of those well-known vocal coaches, some of our live events, and what I do notice is that sometimes they get famous on a platform, and it's a piece of the puzzle. And what we're hearing here is, again, and I keep coming back to this idea of this holistic approach, voice that really starts. I mean, I use the phrase "starts at your toes," but
Yeah.
it is so much more than just the vocal folds or just how the tongue.
Exactly. It
Yeah,
can't just be these little piecemeal surface, again, quick fixes that people want to try to put on a voice. We all know putting on a voice does not feel good to us. That's going to be awkward and uncomfortable. So I encourage you to remember that your voice is, yes, a asset and an instrument, but you and your voice are worthy no matter what. And when you can own that and believe that, that's what matters.
What a great note to end on, Matthew in the chat and Helen. Great stuff. Thanks for sharing.
Thanks,
Great
Al.
session. Authenticity. That's what makes you guys so valuable, Tim and Brienne. Champions of authenticity. And again, the outward reflects the inward. So let's get that inward right. Love it, love it, love it. Thank you so much, Brienne. And hey,
Thanks, y'all.
we'll indeed do this again sometime soon. Thanks to all for attending, and we'll catch you next time. As we like to say, we'll speak soon.
Bye, y'all. Thank you.